Before the censors slammed their iron fist on Hollywood morality, the 1930s shimmered with danger and defiance. Imagine a decade where filmmakers dared to mock marriage, religion, and politics in smoky nightclubs and courtroom dramas. These were not just movies, they were acts of rebellion. But when the production code arrived, they vanished into whispers and vaults. Tonight, we uncover 15 bold pre-code hangovers Hollywood wanted you to forget. Number 15. Babyface, 1933. Before the code cracked down, Babyface shocked audiences with its fearless look at ambition and manipulation. The film starred Barbara Stanwyck as Lily Powers, a steel-town girl who used charm and cunning to climb New York's corporate ladder. She moved from office clerk to penthouse resident, leaving broken men and scandalized bosses in her wake. Critics called it dangerous, warning it glamorized greed and moral decay. Studio executives panicked after moral crusaders accused the film of corrupting American values. Warner Brothers reluctantly reshot the ending to punish Lily for her independence, hoping to calm religious leaders. Yet audiences saw something else, a woman refusing to be crushed by hypocrisy. Behind the scenes, censors demanded 26 dialogue cuts, trimming entire scenes of confrontation and temptation. A pre-code print survived in Europe, rediscovered decades later, and restored by the Library of Congress. Today, Babyface stands as a defiant anthem for self-determination. Its restoration revealed the double standard that shaped Hollywood morality for decades. The story did not destroy the system, it exposed it. And in that exposure, Lily Powers became immortal. Number 14. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. Jean Harlow turned scandal into art in Red-Headed Woman, a film so provocative it nearly ended MGM's freedom to release adult stories. Playing Lil Andrews, Harlow portrayed a secretary from the wrong side of town who seduced her wealthy boss to escape poverty. Critics called her performance electric and dangerous. Church groups labeled the picture indecent. Newspapers condemned its corruption of virtue. MGM scrambled to defend itself, claiming it was satire. But the public saw through the defense. The film celebrated a woman who weaponized wit and confidence to dismantle class barriers, an unforgivable sin in Depression-era America. Behind closed doors, studio chiefs debated shelving the film entirely. Harlow's lines were rewritten, and some scenes removed after test audiences gasped too loudly. Even then, the censors found it unfit for general viewing. In Europe, uncut versions circulated quietly, gaining cult admiration among feminist thinkers decades later. The film's legacy endures not because it titillated, but because it refused to apologize. Red-Headed Woman burned through moral hypocrisy like wildfire and left behind the smoldering image of Jean Harlow, bold, untamed, unforgettable. Number 13. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. Based on William Faulkner's controversial novel Sanctuary, this film became the reason censors finally said enough. Miriam Hopkins starred as Temple Drake, a Southern debutante whose curiosity draws her into the criminal underworld. The story's darkness frightened audiences used to soft melodramas. Paramount tried to soften Faulkner's grim vision, but the imagery still stunned critics. Churches protested outside theaters. Local governments banned screenings across the South, calling it moral poison. The studio's lawyers fought to protect it as art, but by then, the moral tide had turned. The motion picture producers and distributors of America pointed to Temple Drake as proof Hollywood could not police itself. Within a year, the production code was enforced with full power. The film vanished from circulation, its prints locked away for decades. When rediscovered in the 1970s, Temple Drake's power still cut deep. It stood as a ghostly warning of what censorship can erase, not depravity, but courage. Today, its restored reels reveal the moment when American cinema lost its innocence and traded risk for restraint. Number 12. Blonde Venus, 1932. Before morality patrols stormed the studio gates, Blonde Venus blurred the line between love, survival, and spectacle. Marlene Dietrich played Helen Faraday, a devoted wife forced into nightclub life to fund her husband's medical treatment. Dressed in exotic feathers under dreamlike lighting, she became the face of defiance. Radiant, weary, untouchable, audiences gasped at its audacity. Critics called it both tragic and indecent. Reviewers complained that it glamorized sin and betrayal, while others hailed it as art trapped inside scandal. Paramount sold it as romantic melodrama, but audiences recognized the raw honesty. A woman cornered by circumstance and punished for wanting freedom. Behind the scenes, Josef von Sternberg clashed with executives who feared government backlash. His surreal visuals and emotional honesty unnerved censors who demanded re-editing. In many cities, police raided screenings after protests from women's clubs who claimed it undermined morality. The film's striking nightclub number, featuring Dietrich emerging from a gorilla costume into sequined glory, became a cinematic symbol of forbidden allure. When the production code arrived, Blonde Venus was one of the first targets. Its complexity was rewritten in later remakes, where redemption replaced rebellion. But Dietrich's hypnotic performance outlived every ban and every cut. Today, the film's surviving prints stand as time capsules of defiance. Blonde Venus whispered what America was too afraid to say, that independence comes with a price, and shame is often society's weapon against the brave. Number 11. Scarface, 1932. Howard Hawks and producer Howard Hughes created chaos with Scarface, a gangster saga so violent and truthful that it terrified moral guardians. Paul Mooney's Tony Camonte rose from small-time thug to underworld king, leaving bodies and broken loyalties in his wake. Inspired by Al Capone's Chicago reign, it was more than crime entertainment. It was an unflinching portrait of American ambition gone feral. Censors saw it as an open wound. Cities banned it outright, claiming it glorified crime. The Hays office refused approval until Hughes added moral lectures and changed the ending 3 times. One version had Tony gunned down by police, another had him surrender, and a third featured a title card condemning lawlessness. Hughes released the film independently anyway, defying every order. The battles delayed release for a year. When it finally hit theaters, audiences lined up around the block. Critics called it indecent yet hypnotic. Politicians raged that it mocked authority, but underground moviegoers cheered. Scarface broke box office records and reshaped the gangster archetype forever. Its legacy burned bright, a blueprint for every rebellion that followed. Without Scarface, there would be no Godfather, no Goodfellas, no Breaking Bad. It was the film that proved crime films could mirror the nation's soul, even when that reflection terrified the powerful. Number 10. Red Dust, 1932. In the sweltering jungles of Indochina, MGM crafted one of the most daring romances of the decade. Clark Gable and Jean Harlow ignited the screen in Red Dust, a film dripping with sweat, temptation, and moral tension. Gable played Dennis Carson, a cynical plantation owner, while Harlow's Van Tyne, a wisecracking drifter, challenged his notions of loyalty and decency. Audiences were stunned. Critics called it smoldering, dangerous, and unfit for polite company. Religious leaders condemned its frank dialogue and the open display of moral confusion. Yet the chemistry between Gable and Harlow was electric, uncontainable. The film's rawness broke through every layer of censorship that tried to smother it. Behind the scenes, MGM executives fought to tone it down. Some scenes were cut, including a rain-soaked confrontation that the censors found too intimate. But director Victor Fleming refused to dilute its emotional grit. He insisted the jungle itself was the metaphor, wild, unpredictable, and human. The production code later forced MGM to remake it as Mogambo in 1953 with a sanitized script and moral closure, but the original remained the untamed version, a cinematic relic of honesty before fear took over. Red Dust proved that emotion could be as dangerous as violence, and that authenticity was often Hollywood's most subversive act. Number 9. Night Nurse, 1931. In the quiet shadow between innocence and corruption, Night Nurse broke through like a lightning strike. Directed by William Wellman, it followed Barbara Stanwyck as Laura Hart, a trainee nurse who discovers that 2 children in her care are being deliberately starved by their wealthy guardians. What began as a routine medical drama became one of the boldest social commentaries of the pre-code era. Audiences were stunned by the story's audacity. Critics praised Stanwyck's grit, but accused the film of being indecent for showing how money and privilege protected cruelty. Clark Gable, in one of his earliest villainous roles, played a chauffeur whose menace haunted the screen. The film stripped away illusions about class morality and dared to show violence not as spectacle, but as systemic evil. Behind the scenes, Wellman fought fiercely to keep the script uncut. Censors wanted major revisions. They objected to everything from dialogue to moral tone. Warner Brothers hesitated to release it, but finally bowed to Wellman's determination. Once in theaters, it caused a sensation. Women's groups protested, but audiences poured in, drawn by word of mouth about its unflinching realism. When the production code tightened, Night Nurse was locked away for decades. Yet modern critics now see it as prophetic, a film that understood corruption in high places long before the term whistleblower existed. Its final scene, where Stanwyck faces danger, not with fear, but with resolve, stands as one of the most haunting acts of courage in early cinema. Number 8. Trouble in Paradise, 1932. Few films have ever balanced elegance and moral rebellion like Ernst Lubitsch's Trouble in Paradise. It was a romantic comedy about thieves, deception, and charm. Yet underneath the witty dialogue lay one of the most subversive visions of love ever filmed. Herbert Marshall and Miriam Hopkins played professional con artists who meet, fall in love, and join forces to rob a wealthy perfume heiress. But when emotions blur the lines between theft and affection, the film turns into a game of morality that no one truly wins. Audiences adored it for its wit and sophistication, yet moral guardians were outraged. It showed crime as alluring and love as ambiguous. No one was punished. No lesson was taught. Critics accused Lubitsch of undermining decency with laughter. When the production code was enforced, Trouble in Paradise vanished from circulation for 3 decades. The censors labeled it dangerous because it made sin look elegant and corruption look charming. But that was precisely Lubitsch's genius, to reveal hypocrisy through humor. Behind the laughter lay truth. The real crime was not theft, but pretense. When it was finally re-released in the 1960s, critics rediscovered it as a masterpiece of irony and style. Today, its whispered sophistication feels timeless, proving that rebellion does not always need a gun. Sometimes, it only needs a smile. Number 7. Freaks, 1932. Todd Browning's Freaks stands alone as the most controversial film of its decade, a horror story with no monsters, except human cruelty. Set in a traveling circus, it cast real sideshow performers to tell the story of betrayal and revenge within a community exploited by outsiders. Audiences were unprepared. Test screenings ended in panic. People fainted, screamed, and demanded refunds. MGM executives were horrified by the backlash. Religious groups declared it immoral, while newspapers called it an abomination. The studio cut nearly 30 minutes and buried it under new marketing that tried to pass it off as a thrill picture. But beneath the sensationalism lay heartbreak. Browning's story exposed society's obsession with beauty and its rejection of difference. The famous climax, where the so-called freaks deliver justice in the rain, became a haunting metaphor for vengeance born of cruelty. After its disastrous release, MGM banned it from reissue. Some countries outlawed it entirely for decades. Browning's career never recovered. Yet over time, Freaks rose from infamy to legend. Modern audiences view it as a tragic masterpiece, a film ahead of its time that humanized those the world had dehumanized. It remains one of the rare movies to confront the real horror, not deformity, but prejudice. And though it destroyed its creator's career, it carved his name permanently into cinema history. Number 6. The Public Enemy, 1931. Few films captured the brutal pulse of early gangster life like The Public Enemy. Directed by William Wellman, it made James Cagney an overnight star and redefined crime cinema forever. The story followed Tom Powers, a street kid who clawed his way up through bootlegging and violence. Unlike earlier crime dramas, this one did not moralize or soften its blows. It dared to show corruption as survival. When it premiered, audiences were both horrified and transfixed. Critics called it indecent, claiming it glorified lawlessness. Politicians demanded bans. Religious leaders argued it would inspire youth rebellion during the Great Depression. But moviegoers packed theaters anyway, drawn by Cagney's unpredictable energy and the film's chilling realism. The infamous grapefruit scene where Cagney smashes fruit into Mae Clark's face became both legendary and scandalous. Studio executives worried about backlash, but Wellman refused to cut it. The gesture symbolized dominance and frustration in a society collapsing under chaos. The censors fought back fiercely. They demanded rewritten endings and moral punishments. Warner Brothers reluctantly added a closing moral statement condemning crime. But everyone knew the audience was rooting for Cagney's fire, not the law's dull lecture. The Public Enemy became a landmark of cinematic rebellion, inspiring a wave of copycat gangster films until the production code silenced them all. Decades later, its raw style and human contradictions still resonate. Beneath the violence, it was a mirror held up to an America desperate, angry, and trapped between survival and sin. Number 5. She Done Him Wrong, 1933. Before censorship dimmed her flame, Mae West lit the screen with danger and wit. In She Done Him Wrong, she played Lady Lou, a cabaret performer with a past as mysterious as her smile. Cary Grant played her straight-laced admirer, caught between temptation and admiration. The film was a wild success. It saved Paramount from bankruptcy, broke box office records, and earned an Academy Award nomination. But its humor and bold confidence infuriated the moral establishment. Reviewers described it as vulgar. Politicians branded West a national disgrace. Yet behind the feathers and laughter lay something deeper, a portrait of female power in a world that punished it. West wrote her own lines, delivered with deliberate provocation. When she said, "Come up and see me sometime," she wasn't just teasing, she was challenging America's moral code to blink first. Censors demanded changes, but Paramount protected her artistry. The film premiered amid protests, with church groups calling for boycotts that only fueled its popularity. Behind the scenes, West's control over her image shocked studio executives. No actress had ever spoken with such authority. Her defiance helped trigger the enforcement of the production code the following year, effectively ending her creative freedom. She Done Him Wrong remains more than a comedy. It's a cultural landmark, a final moment before Hollywood's voice was shackled. Mae West stood tall as both performer and symbol, proving that charisma can be more dangerous than any weapon. Number 4. Heroes for Sale, 1933. Few films in the Depression years dared to confront the system itself. Heroes for Sale did. Directed by William Wellman, it told the story of Tom Holmes, a World War veteran betrayed by the institutions he served. From battlefield valor to unemployment lines, it showed America's underbelly without illusion or safety net. The story followed Holmes as he survived war only to be branded a failure at home. Addiction, job loss, police brutality, and public betrayal, all depicted without moral cushioning. Warner Brothers expected controversy, and they got it. Critics called it anti-American. Politicians accused the film of spreading radical ideas. Audiences were stunned by its honesty. The studio faced threats of censorship in multiple states. Local boards cut scenes that referenced government corruption. Newspapers condemned its social message, claiming it encouraged class resentment. Yet Wellman refused to turn it into propaganda. He said it was about survival, not politics. Behind the scenes, executives tried to bury its message under patriotic advertising, but viewers saw through it. The ending, bleak, honest, and unresolved, haunted Depression-era audiences who recognized themselves on screen. When the production code arrived, Heroes for Sale was among the first casualties. It disappeared from circulation for decades, but its rediscovery in later years revealed its courage. Today, it stands as a rare document of moral rebellion, a film that dared to say the American dream was built on broken promises. Number 3. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, 1932. When audiences first saw I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, silence filled theaters. This was not entertainment, it was revelation. Starring Paul Mooney, the film told the story of James Allen, a returning World War veteran wrongly imprisoned and forced into brutal labor on a southern chain gang. It was inspired by real events and hit the nation like a thunderclap. Critics called it harrowing and revolutionary. For the first time, Hollywood exposed the inhumanity of America's penal system. The film's realism stunned audiences already crushed by the Great Depression. Politicians were furious. Southern states banned it outright, claiming it was defamation. Prison officials threatened lawsuits, but Warner Brothers refused to withdraw it, saying truth needed no apology. Behind the scenes, the studio battled to keep its documentary-like tone. The censors demanded a different ending, but director Mervyn LeRoy insisted on keeping the original. The haunting final scene where Mooney's character fades into darkness and whispers that he survives on the run. The ending left audiences frozen. The film's impact went beyond cinema. It sparked national outrage, leading to prison reforms and public investigations. Yet the production code soon silenced similar stories. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang remained untouchable for decades. Today, its legacy endures as one of the few Hollywood films that dared to shame power, not glorify it. It proved that movies could change more than opinions. They could change policy. Number 2. Queen Christina, 1933. In a decade obsessed with morality, Queen Christina defied it all. Starring Greta Garbo at her mysterious peak, it told the story of Sweden's 17th-century monarch who renounced her throne for freedom. Garbo's portrayal was regal, fearless, and haunting, a woman rejecting marriage, tradition, and even national duty. Audiences were fascinated and unsettled. Critics praised its artistry but whispered about its undertones. Garbo's Christina dressed in men's clothing, kissed her maid, and questioned the very idea of gendered destiny, ideas unthinkable for the time. Religious leaders attacked the film for blasphemy. Censors tried to trim scenes of intimacy and independence, but Garbo's presence was impossible to erase. Behind the curtain, MGM executives trembled. They knew it walked a fine line between art and heresy. But director Ruben Mamoulian refused to dilute the message. Every frame shimmered with ambiguity. Beauty turned into rebellion, love into defiance. When the production code took full control a year later, Queen Christina was quietly withdrawn from reissue. But its imagery, Garbo's final scene standing at the prow of a ship, gazing into eternity, became immortal. It remains a cinematic hymn to freedom, a pre-code masterpiece that refused to bow. In Garbo's stillness, generations found a message hidden beneath the spectacle that truth, in any form, cannot be censored forever. Number 1. The Sign of the Cross, 1932. Cecil B. DeMille's The Sign of the Cross was the grandest and most audacious pre-code spectacle ever filmed and the final straw for America's moral watchdogs. Set in decadent Rome, it turned Christian martyrdom into visual poetry and pagan excess into cinematic sin. Claudette Colbert bathed nude in milk. Charles Laughton's Nero ogled men and women alike. The orgies, the violence, and the sensuality felt too real for a nation on edge. Religious groups went to war. Catholic bishops demanded boycotts. Protestant ministers preached against Paramount for prostituting faith. DeMille defended himself, saying he only showed the corruption that morality sought to erase, but no one bought it. The Production Code Administration cited the Sign of the Cross as proof that Hollywood had lost its conscience. Within 2 years, the code became law. Behind the scenes, editors shredded entire reels. Paramount's publicity machine reframed the film as a spiritual epic, yet the forbidden cut lived on in Europe, whispered about for decades. When the uncut version resurfaced, historians realized its true power. It wasn't blasphemy, it was honesty. DeMille's Rome mirrored 1930s America, where spectacle masked decay. The Sign of the Cross didn't just end the pre-code era, it baptized censorship itself. And in that baptism, Hollywood's wildest decade was washed clean but never forgotten. Before the code caged creativity. Hollywood was a wild mirror reflecting the beauty, corruption, and courage of a restless nation. These 15 films were not scandals. They were confessions. Now that they are back from the shadows, which one shocked you most? Tell us in the comments, subscribe for more cinematic history, and keep curiosity alive.